The door was opened. I just went back and reread my speech on the floor because the gentleman, I hadn't done that yet. I went back and reread my speech on the floor. I stand by every word of that speech, and in it I referenced the fact that I had just a few months prior had been in agreement with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle with respect to January 6th, which there's disagreements on our side of the aisle on some of that with respect to the votes at the time, and that I'd taken very strong disagreement and sought apology from our colleague on our side of the aisle about some of the remarks that were said, but felt that this was not the right path to go down.
The House chamber was already tense when Ilhan Omar rose to speak. Her tone was firm, her words passionate, about injustice, oppression, and what she described as deep-rooted prejudice in American politics. But beneath the calm delivery, many lawmakers saw her speech as yet another attempt to deflect from her own controversial remarks. Chip Roy sat motionless, eyes locked on her, frustration building with every sentence. The energy in the room thickened, everyone sensed a storm coming. And when Roy finally stood, the atmosphere snapped. The noise died instantly. His presence alone demanded silence. In a voice steady and sharp, he began to take her arguments apart, accusing Omar of cloaking division in emotional rhetoric. Leadership, he said, isn't about victimhood, it's about courage and integrity, even when it costs you comfort. Then came the precision strikes, incident after incident, where he claimed Omar had insulted allies, fractured unity, and turned every debate into a personal crusade. He didn't shout, he didn't grandstand. His delivery was surgical, cold, and devastatingly effective.
Thank you for holding this very important hearing. I'm no stranger to discrimination, hate speech, or threats of violence against my family and myself simply because of my identity. As a Black, visibly Muslim woman who came to this country as a refugee, I have dealt with racist, xenophobic, bigoted comments and threats all my life.
Feeling cornered, Ilhan Omar fired back with blazing emotion. Her voice rose as she accused Chip Roy of representing the establishment, the very system, she said, that silences and misunderstands marginalized voices. Her words burned with fury, calling Roy a symbol of privilege and hypocrisy. The chamber gasped. It was an open insult on the House floor, landing like a spark in dry grass. While her supporters may have cheered her defiance, most of her colleagues were stunned. Instead of reinforcing her argument, Omar's attack fractured the room even further. She had crossed a line, one that couldn't be taken back once spoken before the nation. Chaos erupted instantly. Lawmakers shouted over each other as Roy demanded order. The speaker's gavel cracked against the desk again and again, but control was gone. What began as a debate had spiraled into a full-blown breakdown of congressional decorum. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered frantically, and history unfolded in real time. Roy's allies accused Omar of disgracing the institution, while her defenders claimed she was being punished for speaking truth to power. But one thing was certain, the chamber was electric, and no one knew where this explosion would end.
We've heard from my colleagues the reasons why the Representative Omar should be removed from this committee, but I feel like all the reasons have not just yet been stated, which is why I rise to add for the record. We've heard about the comments that were made regarding anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli views, but I rise to add to the record that as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I've sat there and heard the representative actually spew anti-American rhetoric as well. I've been in that committee room where the representative equates Israel and the United States to Hamas and the Taliban. Absolutely unacceptable for a member of that committee. I've also heard the representative equate that it is the United States' fault that there is turmoil in Venezuela.
When calm finally returned, Chip Roy delivered the speech that would define his career. With unwavering focus, he laid out a timeline of Ilhan Omar's most controversial moments, from her remarks about 9/11 to her fiery takes on foreign policy. He made it clear, this wasn't about race or religion, it was about respect, truth, and accountability. His voice grew steadier, stronger. If we can't hold ourselves to a higher standard, he declared, how can we expect the American people to trust us? Every line hit like a hammer. By the time he finished, even Omar's allies looked shaken. The chamber fell silent, that rare, heavy kind of silence that comes when everyone knows they've just witnessed history. In the moments that followed, something shifted. Lawmakers who once defended Omar began quietly stepping back. The energy in the room wasn't about loyalty anymore, it was about damage control and preserving the credibility of Congress itself. Roy's takedown had changed the temperature. Behind closed doors, murmurs spread, had Omar finally gone too far? For years, she had brushed off controversy and come back stronger. But this time was different. The isolation around her was unmistakable, and for the first time, even her own party seemed unwilling to stand beside her.
With all the remarks, the gentleman from South Carolina, I have very strong disagreement with a lot of the statements that Representative Omar has made. We've covered most of them. That some people did something is the one that really sticks in my craw pretty strongly. Raises a whole lot of flags for me. I think there are significant amount of justifications to raise issues with respect to service on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but I would not go down this road. But I'm also reminded, in August of 1993, Juan Gonzalez was a batter for the Texas Rangers and was plunked by Alex Fernandez from the White Sox. And just a little bit later, Robin Ventura came to the plate for the White Sox, and Nolan Ryan was on the mound. And Robin knew what was about to happen. Nolan plunked him. And then Robin Ventura charged the mound, and then Nolan Ryan beat the crud out of him on the mound. That's what happened. We all know that's what happened. It's old school baseball. Nolan Ryan defined old school baseball. This is raw politics. That's what this is. When the doors opened, then there's a question, and you have to decide what you're going to do. We're not going to unilaterally disarm. Just not going to do it. I'm tired of that. It just is what it is. Guys took a shot at someone on our team, about statements I disagreed with, and took very much to task. But I've got strong disagreements with Representative Omar. I would prefer, if it were just starting from scratch, I would not choose this path. I'd just say whatever stuff you all want to say. We'll say whatever stuff we want to say. Our managers will pick our team. Let's go battle it out in committee. That's what I would say. I would say that's the right place to be. But at this point in time, it is my considered judgment that, like Nolan Ryan, we've got to respond. And I'm just going to be blunt and honest about it. That's just my belief. I think it's.
The following day, Congress reconvened under intense national attention. The question on everyone's mind was simple. Would there be consequences? Chip Roy led the charge, arguing that Omar's remarks had violated the standards of congressional conduct. His message was straightforward. If members of Congress can insult their colleagues on live television without repercussions, then the institution loses its moral authority. Lawmakers debated fiercely, some insisting that removing her would set a dangerous precedent, while others argued that letting her stay would erode public trust. The room was divided, but the momentum toward discipline was undeniable. When Ilhan Omar took the stand one last time, her voice carried a mixture of defiance and desperation. She claimed she was being unfairly targeted because of who she was, not what she said. Her tone softened as she spoke about her journey, her struggles, and her desire to represent unheard voices. But her words didn't land the same way anymore. The room remained silent, not in respect, but in exhaustion. Lawmakers had heard enough. Omar's final defense sounded less like conviction and more like damage control, a sign that she knew her political standing had crumbled beyond repair.
Because of the oppressive socialist and communism that has spread throughout Central and South America and Venezuela at the hands of the Maduro and Hugo Chavez regimes. That is unacceptable. And as a New York representative, to hear the representative belittle, to try to diminish the worst terrorist attack on United States soil on September 11, 2001, as some people did something, that is unacceptable as well. And I hold the same standard for this side of the aisle that I do the other, because when another colleague on my side said something about 9/11, I also voted to have her removed from the Education Committee because I thought that was inappropriate. So I'm being consistent here, and I hope my colleagues will do the same to show that this is about consistency and accountability, because we should not have an individual with those views on the committee that is tasked with representing our country and our Congress to foreign nations. I yield back.
When the speaker finally called for a vote, the entire nation held its breath. Cameras rolled as each name was read aloud, echoing through the tense chamber. One by one, voices declared their decision. The result was decisive. Ilhan Omar was officially removed from her committee seat, a stunning and historic fall from power. Applause erupted from Roy's side of the aisle, while others sat frozen in disbelief. But this wasn't just about party lines or political rivalry. It was about the message that no member, no matter how prominent or protected, stands above accountability. The vote marked the end of an era where rhetoric went unchecked. In the days that followed, the fallout was everywhere. News outlets replayed the confrontation on loop, dissecting every word, every glance, every pause. Some hailed Chip Roy's stand as an act of courage and integrity, proof that principle could still triumph over politics. Others condemned the move as silencing a minority voice in a moment of national tension. But regardless of the spin, one truth was undeniable: this clash between Roy and Omar had become a watershed moment in congressional history. A moment when words finally had consequences, and the line between power and responsibility was redrawn before the eyes of the world.
Important. And I hope we'll get through this, we'll kind of hip check each other. Maybe we can sit down and figure out by the end of this Congress, next Congress, whoever's in charge, we figure out how we're going to play ball going forward and set those rules. And I would say the same thing about open rules, closed rules, structured rules. And the ranking member could scoff. We've had X number of votes. We'll have continued debate about this stuff over time. There will be closed rules. There will be structured rules. There will be open rules. I'd like to have that debate. I'd like to have the considered judgment of the ranking member on that, and as I have debate on my side of the aisle. I'm just saying that we can figure out how to protect this institution and try to decide how to do things the right way. But in this instance, I'm going to be very open and honest about why I'm going to vote for this resolution. That's why. Again, recognizing the statements that the representative has made, I find to be highly problematic, extremely concerning, raising very serious questions from a foreign affairs perspective, as the ranking member has raised about statements made and how he feels about people being on certain committees over here.
Gentlemen,
I think we should, in my opinion, we should withdraw from that battle going forward and then let each manager pick their team. And I'll be glad to yield to the gentleman from Colorado.
And I would simply say I appreciate Mr. Roy's honesty. I mean, and again, kind of similar to what Mr. Massey said previously, and not to belabor the point, because I think you've already conceded this, but why not emulate the same resolution that was used in the past as opposed to...
Within hours of the vote, newsrooms across the nation erupted with headlines. Major networks replayed the fiery exchange between Chip Roy and Ilhan Omar on loop, dissecting every word, every glare, every pause. Political analysts filled panels debating whether this moment represented long overdue justice or a dangerous overreach. Meanwhile, social media exploded. Hashtags supporting both sides trended as Americans fiercely argued over what accountability should really mean. For Ilhan Omar, the spotlight that had once elevated her to national prominence turned into a relentless storm she could no longer steer. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. Many voters accused her of using her platform to divide rather than unite, saying this time she had gone too far. In contrast, Chip Roy's image soared. He became a symbol of restraint, conviction, and institutional integrity, praised across the aisle for defending the dignity of Congress. Even within the Democratic ranks, quiet murmurs began to surface. Some questioned whether Omar's conduct had inflicted lasting damage on their party's credibility. What began as a clash of ideology had transformed into a battle over character. And in the court of public opinion, Omar's reputation was taking blow after blow. As the story continued to dominate the airwaves, even the White House couldn't stay silent. When pressed by reporters, administration officials delivered a measured response, calling for respectful discourse and accountability for all members of Congress. But beneath the polished statements, one truth was clear: Washington had been shaken to its core.
Calling this something that it is not in terms of the due process language. That's the part that I just didn't understand, because if it doesn't provide due process, why? So, as you said, it's partisan, it's not. And again, I appreciate the honesty on that front, and obviously the past presidents that you cited and the rest. But
I don't want to interrupt.
No.
Yeah, I would just say, agreeing with the gentleman from Kentucky, putting something in the whereas clauses, outlining I think genuine statement by the speaker on our side or whatever, saying that would be taken into consideration and viewed is something. It is something. It is not, I will be very clear, due process in the way we mean it in court. This is not a court. This is not due process in that sense. The question here is what we're going to do as members to afford each other the opportunity to speak, be heard. I'm much more in the favor of let each other speak and be heard, and then go use your First Amendment rights to go say why you think that person said something crazy or disagreeable. I would prefer to be in that space. I have no problem with that language being in the whereas clauses. I'm not going to go trumpet it as some grand, amount of due process. It's something. It's something in there, and I'd hang my hat on it and say, yeah, go argue the ethics and make the claim. But that's not what this is about. I mean, let's just be clear.
But behind the scenes, unease rippled through Washington. Senior officials privately admitted that the confrontation had derailed national focus, shifting attention from pressing policy debates to raw political drama. Chip Roy's message of accountability had struck a chord so powerfully that it reached even the upper echelons of government, forcing the nation's leaders to confront uncomfortable questions about integrity within their own ranks. Days later, Ilhan Omar appeared on national television for an emotional interview, a clear attempt to reclaim her public image. Her tone was subdued, her words deliberate. She spoke of being misunderstood, of enduring years of relentless criticism, and of her mission to represent those who feel unheard and unseen. But despite her effort to soften her image, the response was tepid. Viewers and commentators alike sensed the tension behind her calm demeanor. What was meant to be a moment of redemption instead exposed just how far public trust had slipped away.
Ryan plunks Ventura for a reason. And I yield back.
Gentlelady from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You know what gets me fired up? When people pretend that what's happening in Washington is just politics as usual. What we witnessed in that video wasn't just another speech. It was a raw, unfiltered moment of truth from someone who's been in the trenches long enough to know how deep the rot goes. Let me break it down for you, because what he said matters, and what it means matters even more. We had a representative from Texas standing tall, owning the truth that this wasn't just about Ilhan Omar's past comments or her seat on a committee. This was about a door being kicked wide open years ago, and now folks like us finally walking through it with eyes wide open and fists clenched with resolve. He laid it out, plain as day. The Democrats set the precedent. They changed the rules. They launched filibusters against Hispanic and Black conservative judges. Judges who were more qualified than half the folks sitting on benches today. Remember Miguel Estrada, Priscilla Owen, Janice Rogers Brown? Blocked, sidelined, ignored, not for what they did, but for who they were and what they believed. But now, when we push back, suddenly it's a crisis? Give me a break. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. You can't preach about fairness while you're swinging the bat, and then cry foul when we finally step up to the plate.
Within hours of the vote, newsrooms across the country exploded with headlines. Major networks replayed the heated exchange between Chip Roy and Ilhan Omar on loop, dissecting every glance, every word. Political commentators debated whether it was justice or overreach, while social media turned the confrontation into a nationwide reckoning. Hashtags supporting both sides trended for days as Americans argued over what accountability should really look like. For Omar, the spotlight that once made her a national figure became an unrelenting storm she could no longer control. Viewers felt she was dodging responsibility again. No interview could erase the image of her fiery insult echoing through the halls of Congress. The damage was done. Meanwhile, Chip Roy's popularity skyrocketed. Conservative voters hailed him as the man who restored courage and order to Congress. His social media exploded, his speeches went viral, and pundits dubbed him the voice of accountability. But for Roy, it wasn't about fame, it was about principle. You can't lead with fear of backlash, he told one interviewer. You lead by doing what's right. Those words resonated deeply with Americans tired of political theater, cementing his image as a no-nonsense truth-teller, yet Omar's removal sent shockwaves through her own party. Some warned it set a dangerous precedent, that future majorities might use the same power for political revenge. Others quietly admitted her behavior had gone too far. Behind closed doors, debates grew tense. The argument was no longer about loyalty, it was about morality. Where did their line of tolerance truly stand? The world watched closely. Some foreign leaders called it a triumph of democracy, proof that even powerful figures could face consequences. Others saw it as a sign of growing instability in Washington. Supporters of Chip Roy claimed the moment showed America still valued accountability above politics. What began as a personal feud had evolved into a global conversation about leadership, integrity, and the future of democracy itself. In the weeks that followed, members of Congress took a hard look inward. Many admitted civility had eroded, turning debates into spectacles instead of solutions. In a rare moment of unity, Chip Roy addressed the House once more. "This shouldn't be about one person," he said. "It's about how we conduct ourselves as representatives." His words drew bipartisan applause. Even Omar's former allies quietly agreed. Respect in politics had become a forgotten value. As the dust settled, Ilhan Omar faced an uncertain future. Her influence was diminished, her allies cautious, her opponents emboldened. The once fiery congresswoman who commanded every debate now struggled to stay relevant. It was a humbling fall from grace, a reminder that political power, no matter how strong, can vanish in an instant. Months later, the clash between Chip Roy and Ilhan Omar was still being dissected in documentaries, podcasts, and late-night political panels. Some framed it as justice. Others as a cautionary tale of pride and downfall. But one truth stood above all: it changed Congress forever. Words have weight. Actions have consequences. Chip Roy's stand wasn't just a moment, it became a defining chapter in America's ongoing battle between integrity and ideology.